I am personally honored to have the opportunity to introduce our next speaker. Not only is one of the best Mac admins that I've known, he's become a true friend and was my personal introduction to Jamf some years ago. Again, a true friend, it is with great pride that I asked Jordan Daly to share the successes that Foursquare has had in scaling their Mac management using Jamf. Jordan.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for Josh for that introduction. I'm sure he's been doing a great job all day, and I'm sure he's tired, and I'm sure the rest of us are all tired as well. It's the last day we got. All right, but welcome. Day one, last session. I just want to start off with one thing because I'm going to mess this up all day. I'm starting the fund for anybody who's messing up Casper versus Jamf, $5 on the table. I'm going to mess up all day on this, all right? But one more time, my name is Jordan Daly. I'm an IT systems admin for Foursquare. It's a little app you may have heard of. If not, check it out, App Store. We also have an app called Swarm where you can do some check-ins. Pretty cool stuff, all right? Had to throw the shameless plug, just needed to be done. But right now, about me, been using Jamf since about 2010. I have been part of Tiffany & Company, ThinkFixed, Merrill Corporation, AOL as of recent, and now with Foursquare. Worked my way up basically from a call center help desk guy, and now I get the privilege to speak at the JNUC on how we've transformed Foursquare. Now on to the good stuff. From ground to cloud, how we checked into online services. So basically what I want to do is take you on a journey, right? It's not going to be a deep dive. It's going to be how we started and then how we progressed into getting everything up and running. And it took just a year. We've made our way from very minimal to now a full-scale cloud system. And the three ways we did it, we transitioned up into AWS. We utilized DEP, and we created a culture of self-service. These are the big three keys that we actually went through. Come on now. All right, so day one. I wasn't present for the first day we actually got started. I actually joined the team a little bit later. I had a couple of guys that were there before me, Alessandro de Guzman, Rich Verasso. These guys really stepped up and did a great job, and they would hate me if I did not give them a shout out, so I had to. But these guys did a great job. This is what they started with. JSS on a Mac Mini located at NYC. We started off with a file distribution point located in New York, and we had our JDS located in San Francisco. Everything was running on Mac Minis. It was real simple. But we had 95% enrollment, which was fantastic. All the users were getting involved. Everybody was really pumped up about the fact that we were getting some management behind it. So now we sit here, and I think this all kind of looks familiar to a lot of people, especially just starting off. You're saying, okay, I got these three pieces in place. I got my JSS, I got a JDS, I have this file distribution point, and this is how we're going to spread everything. Except when you look at this next slide, that leaves a lot of room to grow, right? When you look at these quadrants, you're basically saying, okay, I got my two offices, but what about everybody else outside of there, right? So this is the day one user map or employee map that Foursquare had. If you take a look up there, it's pretty minimal, right? We have New York, we have San Francisco. These are our two biggest offices, housed about 200 people total. Right? And then we get some stragglers out in Chicago and Atlanta, really minimal, no remote users. But when companies grow, this happens. Los Angeles, Detroit, Green Bay, Dallas, Boston, we just keep on moving. And we keep on getting people in all these different locations. Not only that, we added people in Atlanta, we added people in Chicago. So now we have to really step back and say, we have to grow with our company. We have to look at everything and we have to take a step and go, we need remote. Right? We need to be able to help out anybody who's not in that office. And that was the biggest thing that we really decided to do. This is where we're at now. So we moved out to the cloud. We obviously went to AWS. Now you could do this in your own corporate data center. You could do this in Jamf Cloud, which is a fantastic product, but we decided to actually step up and do it in AWS. Foursquare was already using AWS as a product, so it was really easy for us to just jump in and use a couple of the security groups, use a couple of the instances that they already had up and running. It was a really great way to jump in there. So now, if we jump over, this is what it looked like. This is what we start looking like at AWS. There we are, our JSS with our MySQL database on there. That's behind our firewall. Then we add up a web instance, right? Put that in the DMZ. We get a virtual machine that's going to be running our JDS in New York, virtual machine for a JDS out in San Francisco. And lastly, we step up and we put a CDP out in CloudFront. So now we're looking at everything. We have everything in our DMZ. We're located behind the firewall, so we're safe and secure. And we have our 2 internal systems that are ready to actually remotely or internally deploy packages. All right, so the best thing about this is that it's really nice and scalable. If I get another office out in Chicago, like a big one, I just throw another JDS in there. All right? If I actually look out and I'm like, okay, I get a lot of more people out on the West Coast, I could throw up another web instance out in AWS, right? Say we start going international. I can do the same thing out in the UK, Dublin. I can start using AWS in all these different areas. And it's actually really useful. This is the basics of what we did for our transition. Our 2 instances up in the cloud were the JSS and the JSS web instance. We used CentOS for both of those. We had 2 security groups that were already up and running, and those security groups were basically ready to roll. We just had to poke a couple of holes for MySQL and allow for our internal and our web instance to talk to each other. But the JDSs in San Francisco and New York were able to communicate up to the JSS that was already behind the firewall. Worked out pretty seamlessly for us to just piggyback onto whatever everybody else was doing. It was very nice. We also did the weekly snapshots of the internal instance as well as the external instance. Nightly backups of the MySQL. All right, we also backed up the CA cert. And these are all the things that we kind of tried to make sure that we were going through. And of course, we were utilizing the JSS database utility to do all these backups. We were using AWS to do the snapshots. And then we were running cron jobs on our ESXi host to actually do some nightly backups or weekly backups for our JDS systems. For our migration method, we actually really thought long and hard about this. We didn't know if we wanted to transfer everything. We ended up deciding that we wanted to actually start clean. We didn't know how our database was really going to look after the transfer. We knew it was pretty messy right off the bat just because we had some old records in there that should have been removed, some policies we weren't using anymore. So we kind of cleaned it up. And what we decided to do was actually use the JSS migration utility. Jeff Compton did a whole thing on it last year, and it was fantastic. And this is what gave me the idea to do this. So shout out to Jeff. He was fantastic last year. And this is what the JNUC can do. All right? So what we did is we put all the packages up on our master JDS. Right? We ran through the JSS migration utility. We got our policies in place. We got our groups in place. We got basically everything we needed in place, and we lined everything up. All right, and then lastly, we make sure that self-service is mimicking it, because you want everything to be seamless when you're doing this. All right, you want to make sure that the user is not going to notice this misstep. You're going to communicate it, but you want to make sure everything looks good. Next comes the enrollment. How do you make it seamless? You policy it. These policies are supposed to all happen on the back end for the most part anyway, right? So you throw a package on there with the new quick add, you send it out to anybody who's currently enrolled, and now they're enrolled in the new one. And everything's going to look exactly the same. It's not going to change what they're seeing. So that's nice and pretty, but there's of course going to be people that aren't enrolled, that the policy fails on, right? Anybody who's remote. you're going to have to actually find out ways to enroll these people outside of that. All right, and so what we try to do is we try to over-communicate, over-establish trust. Right? So you set up the open enrollment where anybody can log in and use their LDAP credentials, or just send them something in Google Drive or Dropbox that they can install on their own. Does it work? For the most part. You're just kind of hoping somebody steps into the office soon, because then it's just going to policy down anyway. But this is the next part. Now that we have this in place, now that we have our cloud infrastructure in place, now we can start looking at remotely supporting these users with DEP. Now, JAMP gives you the Heart IT sticky note. We have a little bit of a darker sense of humor. We want that computer to be let out of its cage. All right? We want that MacBook Pro or MacBook Air to be let out. So basically what we do is let the customer decide. We give them a piece of paper that has their login instructions, and we let it roll. All right? And how great is it, the fact that we can send a boxed computer to absolutely anybody and just let it get enrolled in our department? I mean, it's unbelievable the way DEP can actually function for us. And this is how we utilize it. All right? So we set up 2 pre-staging environments, right? Basically, however small your company is, the way I divide things is engineering and non-engineering. Right? Yeah, you're going to have your design folks, you're going to have your marketing, you're going to have finance, and your engineering department's going to be different. It's going to be DevOps, it's going to be, software engineers, product engineers. But really, in essence, you're just dividing those 2 because they're all going to get the same software. So we put it down to the basest possible groups of eng versus non-eng. And when we do that, we put all those different LDAP groups into those 2 environments. So after that, we actually just let it roll. They log in with their LDAP credentials, contacts home, and basically says, all right, you're going to get Xcode. You're going to get Microsoft Office. And then after that, we selectively scope out different things. So if you are part of a design team, you're going to see something say, hey, maybe you get Adobe. Maybe you get something like LibreOffice if you're an engineer. All right, so we selectively scope out different things. And we make anything available in self-service that they really need. But that's the big thing. You really want to create a culture of self-service. Right? You need to earn the trust of the people. Because let's put it this way. We've all done the help desk. We've done the support desk. And IT can be a very interruptive job. Tell me how many times you've been sitting there, typing up some kind of code, typing up an automation script, and you get that sinking feeling that somebody's coming up behind you with one of those, hey, you got a minute questions? And it's never a minute. It's going to take a little bit of time, right? At Foursquare, we have 3 engineers, but we still get stuck doing some help desk tickets every once in a while. And what we try to do is we try to make this culture be part of the company, right? And it's easy to actually work on these things once you can separate out what kind of tickets are going to go where. Right? Now, everybody's going to be doing, hey, printers, fantastic. Apps, fantastic. Fonts. What we try to actually succeed with is maintenance tools. Maintenance tools actually get pretty sexy sometimes. So we actually wrote a bunch of these. Right? So you're gonna have a bunch of these up there, and you look through them. Some are fun, some are really serious. But obviously, when you get through this stuff, you want to build tools that are necessary for your office. You're going to see what those tickets are that come in, right? So if you sit there and you understand that, John in finance is going to be like, hey, my browser's not working. Well, what's going on with it? Try clear your cache of cookies, try this, try that, right? Now he could just go to self-service. You don't have to tell him how to go into Firefox and clear his cache and cookies anymore, right? How many times have you told somebody that? You know, you look at the magic fix button, and the magic fix button, what does it do? Does it stop Spotify from opening up at startup because we all hate that, right? Does it clear cache and cookies? Does it clear your by host cache? What it definitely does is it forces a reboot. I'll tell you that much. All right? And you think I'm infected, submit your crashes. These things are all things that we built in-house to try to help our users help us. All right? And this is the kind of culture that you kind of have to bring with people. And it's always tough, but it's always about over-communicating, establishing trust, right? And just being a part of the team. And how we decided to be a part of the team was to have fun with it. Right? If your culture for the company is a fun culture, have fun with it. I talked to marketing at my company and I said, hey, can you help me out with copy? They said, no, we don't have the time. I said, okay, I'm going to write it and it's going to be completely ridiculous. I hope you enjoy this. All right? I know we're all excited that we can now brand self-service in 10, but we worked. And we created our little sticker droid to be our mascot. All right? This is kind of the community that you have to drive to create. You know, and this is really the establishing point of how you create this ground to cloud. Because no matter what, you're still going to have people that are going to be on the ground. And you still have to have that trust and that fun and that, tight-knit group. Because it's always going to be a community. All right? And this is the most enjoyable thing that anybody's going to have, right? Now, before I go to questions, I know this was really quick, but I want to leave you with two important things, right? The first thing is that culture is gigantic. We just heard an entire presentation on culture. All right? This is one of the most important things, and that's why Jamf is about culture. That's why any tech startup that you're going to go to is about culture. Don't fight it. Be a part of it. All right? Talk to anybody that you can talk to, because the only way you're going to be able to grow your JSS, and the only thing you're going to be able to do, is if you actually talk to your people. Everybody needs to know what you're doing and what you can do for them. You just want to make sure that you keep with the culture of the company, right? And then number two is that you can't be afraid of growing, right? You know, if I went back to that slide where I showed you our AWS setup now, all right? You look at that slide, I'm prepared for this company to do what they want, all right? I'm prepared now to say, okay, we're going to add some more remote users. We're going to add a new remote office. The format that we put in place now makes us ahead of the curve. And now we're allowed to actually grow with the company, not fight the company on growth. Don't be afraid of what the company's going to do. Grow with them and be a part of it. Those are the two most important things that I would say you could take out of this today. But thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed.
And let's give it one more time for Jordan Daly coming out here, spending his time giving us little words of wisdom here. If anybody here would like to ask a question, we have two means to do so. You can actually execute a little hashtag here in Twitter, JNUC 2016 Square. However, if you would rather raise your hand, I will run around and put this mic in your face, and you can ask the question to me. Well, to the mic. There you go.
Hi, just a question. So as the company gets bigger and you're preparing for more growth, how do you deal with having to put in place policies that may restrict users in certain situations for kind of security? Like when you run into these things where it's like, no, don't disable that, or how do you deal with users like that, or the messaging on it?
That's always a tough part of culture, right? You wanna try to see if there is a way to go somewhere in between. You can't be too restrictive, but you can't be completely open. One of the things that we always do is we make sure that we actually hold off on Mac OS updates. All right, just for a quick minute, we got to make sure something's going to break. We let our trusted users do it. That's usually a great thing to do, is have a trusted users group to make sure you're testing out any of these features. And then if it's open, go for it. That's your best bet. But make sure those users are in different departments too. You can't just have all engineers. Have eng, have finance, have sales. Make sure everybody's getting it.
Hey, I was curious, why use JDSs internally and not just use the cloud for distribution?
To save money.
Okay.
Yeah, that was basically it. We understand how much anything as far as AWS transfer for data is. I know it's still cheap, but it's a little bit easier if we could just do it from internal.
We had Twitter user Sarasota6 ask, JSS, what platforms are your virtual machines, Mac or Windows?
Neither. We are I'm sorry. Repeat that?
It says, JSS, what platforms are your virtual machines,
Okay.
Mac or Windows?
Neither. We actually set up Linux boxes, so everything is running on CentOS.
Cool, anyone else? No, please, we have to get it on the audio.
Sorry.
But I get it, you could be too cool for the mic.
You just want to be hands-free like me, that's what it is.
So your files are hosted only on the JDS, or do you have another third?
Nope, that's
Place.
what the CDP was for.
Okay.
So we have the CDP out in CloudFront, but what we do with that is we selectively sync. In case there is anything specifically we do not want to ship out over it, just in case there is any really secretive data that we don't want out there. So that's why we choose to selectively sync out there.
A couple more here from Twitter. I have Alexander Ganal has asked, do you deploy in straight up AWS instance of Linux, or have you tried using Docker to deploy Jamf?
We did not try to use Docker, we just went with the straight up AWS instance.
And Graham Wells has asked, would you consider moving to Jamf Cloud since it's now an established and seamless method for managing Macs in the cloud?
Definitely was on the table, but we like controlling things. We like to be in charge of our own atmosphere, and that's the reason why we wanted to do it this way.
Anyone else? Thank you all very much.
Thank you, guys.